We're talking to Kansas 1st District Congressman Tracy Mann as he's got a lot going on in Washington. But I want to start with the Farm Bill, Tracy, because you have been talking about making sure that this is a 5-year Farm Bill. Can you explain why?
We got to remember why we do farm bills in the first place and why they're 5 years. They're 5 years to provide some certainty for producers, long enough to be certain for producers, but short enough that it can be opened up and looked at to reflect the times. If you look at farming conditions, specifically input costs today versus 2018 when the current Farm Bill was passed, things are dramatically different. So that's why 5 years is the appropriate length. I've been very frustrated with how slow this process has been. It has been extended for 1 year. So the current Farm Bill that we're under now expires September 30th of next year. But just because it got extended a couple weeks ago doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working on and pushing hard for a 5-year bill. And that's exactly what I've been doing with my floor speech that I gave and a whole bunch of other conversations and efforts we've been doing well.
Sure, and but I think you kind of almost want it a 5-year bill. Do you mean 4 additional years or 5 years beyond the year of extension? Just clarify for me.
Yeah, 5 additional years, meaning there's no reason, even though it's been extended for a year, there's no reason that here in the next few weeks, we still can't get a 5-year deal done, Farm Bill done, so that it provides that much more certainty for producers. If we don't, Nick, I don't want to be in a situation where a year from now we're right back where we are, and that's we don't have a Farm Bill done or looking at another short-term extension.
Well, not only that, but it would really be nice, and it was the case this time around, to have Farm Bills come in off years so that you're not dealing with running for office, at least on the House side, while you're trying to put a Farm Bill together.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All the more reason that I'm saying that we've got to be pushing right now to get a 5-year bill done. We don't want further delays to cause the Farm Bill, the 5-year Farm Bill that's going to be now done next year. It looks like, if you delay too far, we get into the election, then you get into the lame dunk period, and there's no reason we don't just get this thing done right now. So that's what we've been jumping up and down, telling everybody who will listen why that's the case, and it's full steam ahead.
All right. There are a couple of other things that have come up this month that we haven't talked, I don't think, in November. And so I wanted to touch base on something that it's a couple of weeks old now, but the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, I heard Senator Marshall's comments to him in the Senate hearing, and I didn't hear answers that made sense to me. Is that really what you're looking for here?
If you look at, there's a whole lot of people, in my view, in the Biden administration that have done a horrible job, and he'd be at the top of the list. Under his watch, 3.8 million individuals have illegally entered into our country, and it's way past time that we act. There has been a resolution introduced to impeach him. Unfortunately, that got tabled here a couple weeks ago. It looks like that's going to come back up this week, maybe even as early as today. If that's the case, I will not be voting to table it. This is something that Congress should take up, send a message, but there's no doubt that he's done a horrible job carrying out his number one responsibility, and that's to defend the homeland of the United States of America.
So here's a question. What is the right thing to do at the border? Obviously, there are a lot of ideas out there. What has traction legislatively?
Well, House Republicans did the most extensive border policy bill that's been done for the last 15 years, really asking and getting at these questions. This is called HR, House Resolution number 2. And it really looks at what are the definitions for asylum? What are the requirements that we should have to come into our country? We should construct a wall. We should reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. There's a whole host of legislative changes that need to happen. What happened is when Biden came into office, he had all these executive orders day one. One of them completely loosened the restrictions of folks coming across. And now fast forward 3 years, and we have 3.8 million people. I mean, we know, Nick, that there are people that are on the terrorist watch list that have come across. Unfortunately, the overwhelming majority of people We don't know who they are, where they're at, what their intentions are. This is a big, big deal. Way past time we get this done. H.R. 2 is the best mechanism to do that, and that's why we're working to try to get H.R. 2 attached to something that has to pass the issue to get people to agree and to get serious about our border.
So what have you got left that's must pass at this point? Y'all have CR'd your way through the budget, and not to the House's discredit. The House has done quite a bit, but the Senate has just basically said, no, we're going to kick the can down the road. It feels like, and that's not the fault of the Kansas delegation. Let me be really clear on that. Just the majority leadership in the Senate has felt like they've wanted to kick the can down the road. What must pass stuff is still around?
And on the House side, I strongly oppose these CRs or continuing resolutions, every one that's come up so far. A few things that are must pass. One is what's called the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, basically the bill that funds our military. It's been done on time annually for the last 62 years. So the House has passed their version, a really good version, so that's something that has to get done. The FAA, or the Federal Aviation Administration, they have an authorization that comes up every 5 years. I'm on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, so we've done a lot of work on that for our aviation industry in Kansas. Passed the House, has not passed the Senate, so that expires currently December 31. So something has to get done there. There's the flood insurance program, a host of other things as well. So the list isn't as long as it sometimes is in December, but there's still quite a bit of work that Congress needs to do before December 31st.
Work continues in Washington. We're about a month out from the end of the year. They have managed to, as we talked about just before the break, a continuing resolution did pass, although Congressman Mann did not vote for it, but ultimately it ended up passing and getting signed, so that's been pushed out past the end of the year. That's on into 2024. We just talked about the Farm Bill prior to the break. There are other pieces of things that you want to get done for the big first that are important. What else would you like to see accomplished between now and the end of the year?
Yeah, certainly. Farm Bill you talked about is of utmost. There's a handful of other bills. The FAA Reauthorization Act is also incredibly important to the big first. So we're working on that. Additionally, there's going to be a whole host of issues in regards to Israel. You know, our number one ally in the Middle East is absolutely fighting for their survival right now. And so there will be efforts and legislation that I've co-sponsored that we're working on to really make sure that it's very crystal clear to everybody that the United States stands with Israel. So those are a host of priorities as well. Big picture, when I think about threats to our country, Nick, it's our debt, it's China, and it's the drifting we've had from our basic fundamental founding values, and those are all things that I'm very mindful of and working on in Washington, D.C. every day.
Well, and when you talk about fundamental values, that brings me back to Speaker Johnson and how that some folks that write for websites, not the one I write for, have really had a problem with what I would call just traditional, what you and I used to call Orthodox Christian beliefs, and how those have been a part of his life going into when he was the speaker and when he ran for Congress. Does it comfort you to have someone that you know has that kind of a foundation in leadership?
Yes, very much so. You know, I would say, and I know Speaker Johnson well, good man, servant leader, humble, puts others before himself, deep faith. You know, a lot of his attributes, characteristics is very similar to the overwhelming majority of folks in the big first of our district. And so knowing that there is someone who so similarly reflects the vast majority of our values, is definitely a good thing and something I'm really excited about.
All right, so let's talk about China for the couple of minutes that we have left, which I know I could spend an hour with you and we wouldn't finish the subject. But does it concern you that that the president and Xi met, and it feels like they just basically wanted to go back to their corners, to the way things were a few years ago? There wasn't any real how do I put this, ideological space drawn that I saw from any of the reporting from when they met.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And here's the bottom line. The Chinese wish us ill. I mean, they steal our trade secrets. They don't keep their promises. They don't buy the goods that they promised in the Phase 1 China trade deal. They want to be the dominant country in the world. They want a new world order. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. And so I was not surprised that there wasn't any big breakthrough. My sense, Nick, is that world leaders respect strength. And unfortunately, that's not what we're exuding from the White House right now. So there was not a breakthrough. There's anything significant, and maybe it wasn't highlighted in the press all that much, but agreed to reestablish some military contacts and relations between our countries. When we went through the Cold War, there was always hotlines and ways that our country, or us and Russia, could communicate in the case of an escalation or an accident. China reestablished some of those lines. That's a good thing, but by and large, it was not much happened or got changed during that summit here a couple weeks ago.
Last time I talked to Senator Moran, he had gone over to speak with Benjamin Netanyahu as part of his duties, and he said that Netanyahu told him that they really just need ammunition, most of all, to be able to continue the fight. Do you see Congress supporting that financially?
I do. Yep, I think there's broad bipartisan support to help it. Their request, I believe, is $14 billion. Less than practically every other country's been asking. Certainly than what we're seeing from Ukraine and other countries. But I think it's in the American strategic interest to stand with Israel. A lot of what we provide over the years is support for their Iron Dome initiative. That really protects them from inbound missile fire from these terrorist organizations. Remember, a lot of monies or military equipment, things that we send over there, are actually made in America, so it's good for our producers. Not all of it, but a lot of it is. But yeah, there's strong bipartisan support for that, and I think that's something that happens by the end of the year.
Tracy Mann is our congressman in Washington from the Big First District in Kansas. This is KWBW, Hutchinson, Kansas. News is on the way next.